In Kempton Park, Gauteng, South Africa, stands the now neglected shell of what used to be Kempton Park Hospital, later known as Kyalami Hospital. For reasons still indistinct, the clinic was totally deserted and closed down on Boxing Day 1996. Every single patient record and clinical hardware were left inside the medical clinic, where they can in any case be discovered today. Those who love or rush frequently visit the creepy structure looking for phantoms. Occupants of the encompassing area, notwithstanding, don't need to step on the clinic grounds to experience a portion of its dreadful inhabitants. One family professed to have encountered phantom movement in their home, while others have watched in dread as their draperies opened and shut voluntarily and entryways hammered for no natural reason. 3. Yet another family is said to have discovered little wet impressions following all through their home. In the meantime, a wedded couple in the zone professes to have entered their kids' rooms just to discover new young people playing with toys and gazing toward the grown-ups with clear eyes. The creepy youngsters evaporated not long after being discovered. The high number of unpleasant child hauntings in the region is credited to a specialist who figured out how to effectively counterfeit being a certified pediatrician at the medical clinic prior to being gotten. Tragically, a few small kids and infants passed on before he was condemned to 18 years in jail in May 1992. An old Mongolian legend says that a migrant voyager passed on some time in the past in the wake of being overwhelmed by appetite and thirst as he attempted to cross the Gobi Desert. His soul never left the huge parched scene and still howls uproariously, bemoaning his fate. Those who wish to visit or go through the Gobi Desert are cautioned to try not to lay eyes upon the expired voyager, otherwise called the Gobi Desert Whaler, on the off chance that they hear his melancholy cries. It is said that any living individual who takes a gander at the whaler will begin seeping from the eyes and become blind. An anonymous casualty professed to have taken a gander at the whaler, saying that he saw a withered soul with void eye attachments who wore frayed garments. Not long after he saw the phantom, blood began gushing from the casualty's eyes and he became blind. 4. The narrative of Aisha Kandisha is supposed to be the Moroccan variant of the famous Bloody Mary legend. There are a few adaptations of the story, yet it is broadly guaranteed that Aisha Kandisha shows up close to water sources. She utilizes sorcery to look wonderful so she can bait men to her prior to making them crazy or killing them. 5. Whereas Bloody Mary can be brought by murmuring her name multiple times in a dull room, Aisha Kandisha will show up on the off chance that you pour reducing water down a channel. She likewise emerges in different structures, for example, a freaky-looking mermaid or a topless lady with the legs of a goat. Before she assaults and has clueless men, she transforms into a revolting old witch. Men who endure the assault become barren and seriously depressed. If you look into a waterway in Morocco, you may very well see Aisha Kandisha gazing back at you. Additionally, on the off chance that you hear chains shaking along the ground, you would be advised to leave right away. The sound of chains is accepted to declare Aisha's quality nearby. Holes in closet entryways, in drawers, and between dividers are regular in houses, particularly more seasoned ones. While most essentially need repairing, it is accepted that an insidious soul relocates to a hole in a Japanese home. The soul appears as a young lady who is continually looking for a playmate. 9. Once an occupant or guest sees the young lady's eyes watching from a hole inside the house, the soul will find out if the individual needs to play find the stowaway. Regardless of whether the greeting is acknowledged, the individual will be hauled into another measurement on the off chance that the person in question takes a gander at the young lady a subsequent time. That other measurement is accepted to be hell, and the sad individual won't ever be seen again. Moscow has its own clouded side comprising of malicious spirits, headless scares, and vindictive apparitions that show up not long before awful occasions happen. Once of these fretful phantoms can be found on the Gorky Highway. It is claimed that a killer was walking along in a corrective escort in transit to a Siberian correctional settlement. He didn't endure the excursion, as there was no ideal opportunity to cover him. His body was just left along the edge of the road. Many drivers profess to have experienced the soul of the killer out and about. He has a facial hair growth and is dressed like a vagrant. He likewise strolls like his feet are still shackled. If a driver stops close to the phantom, he will be approached to "Pardon me." If the driver doesn't answer with "God will excuse you," and drive away without thinking back, the apparition will drag the driver into the afterlife too. In Jammu and Kashmir lies the Jawahar Tunnel, otherwise known as the Banihal Tunnel. Before you get to the passage, you should go along the Kuni Nala stretch of street. It is notorious for a high number of mishaps bringing about driver and traveler deaths. There is likewise the threat of rocks falling onto vehicles from the mountains close by the street. A steel network structure has been raised to secure drivers. Be that as it may, another danger prowls, and there is apparently no assurance against it. 6. Some voyagers guarantee to have seen a lady wearing a dark sari and conveying an infant. The lady remains out and about, waves to drivers, and requests a lift. On the off chance that a driver won't, he is in a split second reviled by the lady and will before long bite the dust and a fender bender. The city of Kilkenny in Ireland has been named one of the 5 most spooky spots in Europe. The notorious Folksworth Castle is apparently spooky to the point that phantom trackers from BBC showed up in 1992 to check whether they could get a few ghosts in action. Other frequented locales incorporate the stone burial chambers of the Black Abbey, Rothaus, and the Kilkenny Prison. Kilkenny is additionally accepted to be the site of Ireland's first witch trial. 8. The creepiest story, notwithstanding, recounts a flood that happened nearby in 1763. 16 individuals lost their lives in the wake of falling into the River Nor when a scaffold fell underneath their feet on account of the swollen floodwaters. In present-day times, local people and travelers have announced seeing phantoms coast in the fog covering the River Nor as the sun transcends it. Despite the fact that Thailand is generally well known among sightseers for its amazing seashores and hypnotizing design, the nation likewise has sublime wildernesses loaded up with different plant and creature life and stunning cascades. These wildernesses shout to the audacious and the individuals who love camping. If you are sufficiently fortunate to visit these wild regions, ensure you pay special mind to Phi Kong Koi. This Thai wilderness phantom jumps around on one leg and yells "Koi, koi, koi." Those who have experienced the apparition report that it is appalling with a protruding stomach. It chases down campers and different explorers who stay for the time being in the wilderness. That way, it can suck blood from their toes while they rest. Intersection your feet are keeping them together is said to give assurance against the Phi Kong Koi. 10. Numerous individuals consider the secluded Sandwood Bay to be the most delightful seashore in Scotland, if not the entire of Britain. It lies 6.4 kilometers 4 miles from the closest stopping region and is flanked by huge sand ridges and a freshwater loch. Its coastline is accepted to be one of the soonest occupied territories of Scotland. Sandwood Bay is likewise considered by some to be Britain's most spooky seashore. A large number of boats destroyed off its shores without a beacon, and numerous mariners' lives were lost. A beacon was in the long run built at Cape Wrath during the mid-19th century. 7. Between the seashore and Sandwood Loch stand the demolished remaining parts of Sandwood Bay Cottage. Quite a while passed, when the cabin was as yet being used. Occupants would be stirred on blustery evenings by the sound of a spooky mariner thumping on the windows. An old angler professed to have seen the substance of a whiskery mariner taking a gander at him through the window after he heard strides moving toward a little house. Some accept that the unshaven mariner is the anxious soul of nearby recluse James McCrory Smith, who lived nearby for 32 years. Other visitors at the cabin have stirred to the dividers shaking as a crowd of wild apparition ponies stepped their hooves and raged past the bungalow. Should you find yourself in Mexico on traditional feast days, it would serve you well to avoid all crossroads around midnight. It is said that the Aztecs Yuatateo lie in wait at crossroads on these days. They hope to grab their next victim and mercilessly inflict illness, paralysis, or seizures. 1. It is believed that the Aztecs Yuatateo are the spirits of women who died during childbirth and that young children are their favorite victims. If a child does not cross their path during feast days, they settle for men they can seduce. Then the Cihuatateo show their true forms: skeleton faces, claws in place of hands, and horned headdresses. They are also naked from the waist up, as the ancient Aztecs looked upon women who died during labor and birth as fallen warriors. The Aztecs gave these women permission to enter the heaven of the sun, where they remained for 4 years. Once these years had passed, the women made the clouds their home and were turned into Cihuatateo.